sitting number 2 in the golf stat rankings, and I'm on watch lists, and like I have all this pressure, and now I'm 3 over through 4. How am I going to respond to that? Well, luckily I had done some preparation for how I'd feel, and I was able to correct it and finish the tournament in the top 10.
Today we are joined by Will Knauth. Will just finished playing college golf at Carnegie Mellon, where he double majored in physics and math. Will is going to go on and pursue his PhD at Columbia. While in college, Will averaged 76.2 as a freshman and improved that stroke average to 71 by his senior year, while going on to become the number 1 ranked D3 golfer in America. Additionally, Will won 2 tournaments his senior year and received the 2022 Byron Nelson Award. On top of all of that, Will's developed several machine learning tools in order to help analyze golf strategy better. Why don't you walk us through how you started playing golf and what got you into competitive golf?
Yeah, so how I started playing golf is actually a bit of a funny story, bit of a coincidence. So my mom's side of the family grew up in northern Wisconsin. 150 years ago, they were like logging barons. So my grandparents were like, it's time for the kids to see this historical site. It's an old logging camp. We went there. It was totally closed. Like we couldn't go into the museum or anything, but it was on a golf course. So 8-year-old me was like, Mom, Dad, what are they doing? So they told me about golf. Neither of them play. No one in my family plays. But we went in there. There was a super nice guy behind the desk at the shop, Mike. He gave me a 3-iron and some balls to take to the range, and I just started hitting them. I kind of fell in love immediately. Then from there, my parents just started dropping me off at the golf course at 6 a.m. every morning in the summer, pick me up when it gets dark, and I just play all day. And then as far as competitive golf, that just came from, you play enough at your golf course and people are like, hey, you can kind of play a little bit. Have you ever played these tournaments? So we had this thing around where I live called, back in the day, it was the NCPGA. Now it's the Gap Central. And there were these little junior tournaments for $8, one day, $8 golf tournaments that you could go play. And I grew up on those. I played those from like 2010 through 2017. Like that was my first introduction to competitive golf.
And playing in those tournaments, it sounds like those are like smaller events.
Hmm.
What was that like? And did you play like anything bigger than that? Like, did you get into AJGAs or anything like that, or was it just those types of events? And then playing in something like that, did it help boost your confidence? What did that do for your game, you think?
Yeah, so AJGA, I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of the AJGA until I was like about to be a senior in high school. I'm not kidding. Like I didn't know what the AJGA was. Like even as a pretty good golfer, growing up in the middle of nowhere, that information didn't reach us. And by the time it did, geez, I looked at the prices and we just like couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford the travel. There would be no one to travel with me. So it kind of like wasn't even an option. Now, I played a couple of slightly bigger junior tournaments. Like I played one AJGA qualifier. Um, I played a couple PGA Junior Series events. I played like 2 IJGTs. I mean, it was it was fine, but like most of the tournament golf that I was playing was actually that NCPGA stuff like all the way through. Um, I definitely learned something new when I played in the bigger tournaments, when I was 15 or 16 or something and had to play from 7,200 yards for the first time. That was an eye opener. Um, but in terms of what the smaller tournaments did for me, is it got me like it got me comfortable at least having a scorecard in hand. I think that's a big thing. The biggest thing that like holds people back, in my opinion, from being good competitive golfers is just not understanding that there is no difference between competitive golf and normal golf because it feels so different. You're playing the same game, and whatever you can do to make it feel relatively the same is good. And that just requires like playing a lot of tournament golf. So I think that was the big benefit, like having a scorecard in hand, having some guy that like I'm trying to beat, and I'm like keeping my score against his, trying to like figure out what I need to do to win that tournament, right? Getting used to all that. I think that was really good. And I could, be in the hunt every single week playing those $8 tournaments.
And so, what are some of the things that you do to make tournament golf more like um a casual round?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because on one level, you can do a lot of things. There are a lot of things you can do. On another level, there really isn't anything you can do, right? Because your body and your mind are going to feel like how they're going to feel. And you don't necessarily have a lot of control over that. But there are things that you can do to help, incremental things to put yourself in the position. So like I said, like I think a prerequisite is playing a lot of tournament golf and just getting used to that. Like one of the things that made me get a lot better in college was just that we had a tournament every couple weeks, right? You get used to traveling, you get used to playing. Um, so that's kind of a prerequisite. You just have to put yourself in the heat, even if it's not a tournament, like playing for something against your buddies that are the same like skill level as you, playing for something where strokes feel like they have consequences. Beyond that, I think it becomes a lot about controlling your environment. And that means like before, during, after the round. Um, so, we'll talk about before the round, like what are some things you can do. You can make sure that you're in sort of the same headspace that you're normally in, which means like whatever routines you normally have, like if you normally eat a certain thing for breakfast, eat that. If you normally like watch some TV the morning, like do that. Do whatever you normally do. And like if necessary, you can throw in some meditation in there. I've done that and it's really helpful. um make sure that the days leading up, you're eating good food, you're sleeping well. I mean, they're very simple things you can do before the round. Making sure you stretch plenty in the days leading up and the day of, like make sure your body feels decent. And these are all just things to like, connect your mind and body to normalcy. That way, things aren't jumping out at you and giving you mental red flags, which then like creep in to what you're thinking and feeling on the course, if that makes sense. Um, and then during the round, I would say the biggest thing is like being able, like practicing managing your emotions and expectations as things progress. That's a big buzzword right now, managing your expectations. But I think, managing your expectations and managing your emotions really go hand in hand. And that's like one side of it that I think is really important to emphasize. Like, you will play better golf if you understand that your wedge shot from 100 yards to 18 feet was honestly a solid golf shot, you know? Uh, there are just things like that you can carry through with you during your round to like prevent you from ever like leaving that like good headspace that you set yourself up for. Um, and then after the round, you want to debrief to some extent, and then you want to like get right back to your routines and get ready for the next round. um that's honestly like that's the full book on what I think can help you play a little bit better, like make things feel a little bit more normal, like when you go from normal golf to tournament golf. Like all those things are sort of aimed at putting yourself in the right like headspace so that it doesn't feel too different from a normal round.
And these practices, did you learn these practices when you were in college? Did you develop them before college? How did you get to this point where you kind of had built this almost ritual around playing tournaments and trying to connect yourself at both levels?
So it's something I picked up over years and years of experience. There are elements of it that I got from people. Like for instance, Scott Fawcett from Decade is a big proponent of meditation. Um, I didn't do it for a year and a half of like knowing that and knowing him, but then I started doing it because I was like I had a really rough time qualifying last fall, and I was like, some things need to change. So I was like, I'm going to start meditating. Did that, and that it was one thing I added to the ritual. But then, like another thing I added to the ritual when I started college golf was really controlling what I ate because you'd be out there for 36 holes, and it becomes more of a necessity, right? So it's little things you pick up along the way. Like the sleep part I picked up when I played a USAM qualifier when I was 17, and I had to get up at 3:30 in the morning to like drive there and then play my 36 and then drive home. Um yeah, like I realized, oh, I got to get up at 3:30, like I need to go to sleep early. And then you start to think like, you know, you start to include thinking about sleep into your routine. And then I've heard all the science since then. It's one of the most important things you can do.
Going back to those rituals, you kind of mentioned post round, after a tournament round, you have a routine. Could you go a little more in depth about that post round routine during a tournament week?
Yeah, sure. And I'll qualify all this a little bit. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a routine. But it's definitely like, certain things that I like keep track of as a check on normalcy. I wouldn't say that I control too hard what I'm doing. But for instance, like some things I make sure of is like, all right, did I eat some protein after the round? Right. I eat like something that's filling, that has like good protein for recovery, my like getting myself hydrated. Do I need to stretch out? Do I need to like use a Theragun or something? Right. So there are a lot of just little checks, but I would say like the big ones are like taking a little time to decompress, making sure I eat something good. Uh, and then honestly, like whatever needs to happen to get my mind and my body relaxed for the next day, assuming that the tournament goes on in the next day, um, whatever needs to happen there, like whatever show I've been watching, like on Netflix or something, like watching that. Back in college, we do a lot of like playing board games and card games, like in the hotel rooms, like between rounds. So you hang out like you normally would. Uh, but the most important like boxes to check would always be like those recovery boxes.
And you're talking about college there. One thing I was interested in was you ended up at Carnegie Mellon. Did you always know you wanted to play college golf? And how'd you end up there?
So how I ended up there is a funny story. It's a story for another time, but I I kind of like didn't even know what college golf was, to be honest. Like the same way I didn't know how the AJGA worked. I didn't even know that you had to be recruited to teams until it was like almost my senior year of high school. So I was a little behind the curve. I emailed the coach after I got into the school, actually, and I said, "Hey, any chance I can get on the team?" He was actually not even going to email me back. This is a funny little story between the two of us. He wasn't going to email me back. But when I visited campus, I happened to meet the athletic director, and for some reason he liked me, and he called up Dan and he was like, hey, email this kid back, I like him. So we went from him not knowing I existed and not emailing me back to about a month later, he watched my scores in the US Open qualifier. We talked, I sent him some swing videos, and he was like, all right, I've decided I'm going to give you a chance. So I was like, by the time he said he was like going to give me a chance, I had already been committed to the school for weeks, so I was going there, regardless of whether or not golf would be part of it. But golf, I would say, would be one of the most important parts of like that college experience. So I'm glad it did work out.
So you talked about how you know Scott Fawcett, and I've seen on Twitter you engage with him and Lou Stagner. How did you get involved with those guys and with the math of the game and everything?
Sure. Yeah, so I got to know them basically because a little over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, Scott ran a promo on Twitter for hitting 10,000 followers. He was like, I'm giving away a couple like free webinars and decade accounts. And he was like retweet and comment why like you want this. My coach, sent me that tweet and he was like, hey, like you're a math dude, you'd probably have a good shot at getting one of these. So send him a tweet. So I was like, all right. So I replied to the tweet. He saw it. Gave me the webinar. The webinar was originally supposed to be for like 30 minutes to an hour. We ended up talking for like over 2 hours just because, I'm a math guy, right? I majored in, not that it's any bit like applicable, but like I had majored in math in college, math and physics. Uh, I'm going to grad school for statistics, right? So I'm doing a lot of quantitative things, and not that, the math behind playing good golf is anywhere near as complicated as, undergraduate degree in math. But, just having that little bit of nerd in me, we connected over that. So, you know, then COVID happened very shortly after, but I had one tournament before COVID, and it was my like first tournament since learning decade. It was my first tournament since knowing about all of this stuff, knowing about expectations. I was also like rebuilding my golf swing, and I shot my best like round of college to that point. In the final round, I shot 5 under. The team shot 19 under that day. It was insane. And COVID shut everything down. But I was riding that high, and I had like stats from a few rounds finally, and I could like understand like what was really going on. So during COVID, I engaged with them, engaged mainly with Scott at this point, more, and started to really connect with what's going on with the numbers and the stats and all of that. And then, as time went on, I let me make sure I get the timeline right. Yeah. So then after that, that's when, after COVID kind of slowed down for the first time, that's when Bryson won the U.S. Open. Okay. So when Bryson won the U.S. Open, it was late 2020. I had like known this stuff, been working on getting comfortable with thinking about golf that way for a few months at this point. And Bryson like bashed Winged Foot to death, right? I mean, that was what he said his plan was. And he said like at the beginning of the week, like it sets up for me just fine with the narrow fairways as long as I just keep hitting driver. Like, no one's gonna hit these fairways. And I was like, you know what? There might be some truth to that. And uh it hit me like the effect that fairway width has on like what it means for a drive to be like rewarded. Um, and it's actually like a more subtle relationship than most people realize. See, like for years, the like philosophy was always, the narrower the fairways, like the more important it is to, hit something straight and in play, and, something like that to sort of like fit the golf hole, quote unquote. Um, and this is an important lesson for people thinking about trying to play good golf. That conventional wisdom turned out to be mathematically wrong. I had this inkling when I saw Bryson won the U.S. Open by so much by hitting driver everywhere that actually the fairways were so narrow that they were playing to his advantage rather than his detriment, because no one could hit the fairway, right? So I did the math behind it and I tweeted it out and I said, look, this is why Bryson won the US Open. You want fairways that are 30 to 35 yards wide, and they had fairways that are 22 yards wide, which just, whatever delta Bryson has in fairway percentage due to his length taking balls further offline, that's mitigated by the fairways being so narrow that everyone's percentage is so constrained and going down so much. So uh, I tweeted that out. I think that's like a solid lesson in course management. Like, just because you see a narrow fairway, it's not time to take out the 3-wood or the 2-iron just yet. Like, you have to like actually go through the options properly. But yeah, I tweeted that out with the math, and that got some attention. Scott appreciated it. I think that's around the time I started talking to Lou as well. So then I talked to both of them on a fairly regular basis, and we exchange ideas about golf and, about life, whatever's going on, numbers, opinions on like, hey, does this sound right? We'll bounce all of that back and forth. So it's really good. It's really good, and it's helped my own game too, because now proper course management is like second nature.
That's exactly what I was going to ask about. Is so you knew the math beforehand, you knew decade beforehand, and decade in general. I think Scott would say this too. It's a systematic methodology for figuring out what you should and shouldn't do, but it's more of a set of principles than it is a set of strict rules. And that's the beauty of it, is you can take these principles, you can go to almost any course, and if you don't get it exactly right, get it very close to right as far as target, what club to hit off the tee, etc. And with your capabilities, have you taken the math that you understand, the math even you did like at Winged Foot, have you taken that and applied that deeper into your tournament rounds, and what has that resulted in?
It depends what you call like deeper into my tournament rounds. I mean, I've I've done some funny things. I'm not even gonna lie. I've done some funny things with the stats. I've tried to talk about like probability distributions of making putts to try and diagnose like my putting problems. Like I've gone the whole 9 yards. But I would say like at the end of it, like that's not, like the result of that isn't going to be what helps me play better golf. Like I'm doing that out of curiosity and seeing if I can direct my practice a little bit. I think the important thing to understand from what's going on with the decade stuff and how it helps you play better golf is like, yeah, the targets and the decisions are, generally pretty good, right? But even if the decisions you end up making are a little bit different from the ones that Decade would prescribe, the thing that really helps you play better golf is the mindset of understanding that shot patterns exist, understanding that you are aiming away from the hole because of the inherent probability that you're going to hit this ball offline, right? So that way, when you hit that ball offline, it's no longer a shock to your system. You've no longer like ruined your round or whatever. Oh, I was playing so good. I was hitting laser beams and now all of a sudden it's falling apart. Like, no, you hit laser beams because you hit a string of 4 laser beams in a row. And that's just because every shot. There's a certain probability that you're going to hit one that comes off really good. And there's a certain probability that you do that 4 times in a row, regardless of how you're feeling, yeah, there's some correlation with how your swing's feeling that day, but, letting go of the idea that one shot is dictating like who you are and how you're playing or even what your round's going to be, just taking that it's no longer like one shot that you're planning for and that it's really like a range of outcomes. You set your expectations and your targets based on that range, and then you just accept whatever comes within that range. Sure, if you like make an uncommitted bad swing, sure, you can like, chalk that up to the swing, but otherwise, it allows you to play a lot more freely and just understand that you're going after it, and it allows you to actually take it one shot at a time, unlike, thinking of each shot like determining like where you're at for the next one. Like that's when you get into a mental trap.
And taking that a little further, even, we talk a lot about how golf scores can sometimes define us, especially in college. You take it very seriously. A lot of times you play a bad round and you feel bad because you are Daniel Hamrin, who shot 79 that day, and you've not only done so bad in quotations because that's a normative view of it, but beyond that, you've also maybe feel like you've let your team down his decade, and just this math mindset helped you release that and say, there are things I could do better. There are skills I need to improve, but this was essentially just the probabilities playing themselves out today.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, it's not a dichotomy of like you do decade, you don't feel anything. It's not like that. It's something that I work on over time. The disappointment with not getting what you want out of a round is something that we all deal with, and it's something that we're all going to deal with forever, right? But I've gotten better at it. That's for sure. I remember freshman year, I would be very dejected, even like during rounds, if I had something going and then got on a bad string and the round didn't turn out so great, or like one time, geez, I shot like 72 in the first round of a tournament, and I was playing in the final group. I was playing hard, so I was like in the final group, gonna have a chance to win, and then I think I hit 12 greens and shot 86 the next day, and the way I felt after that round, I was just like so in my head about my putting, right, that my coach made me switch putters the next day. Like it was really bad. There's a progression from that to like that same tournament this year. I played way worse, but I didn't shoot any 86s because, I started off like on a bad streak at the beginning of the tournament. I was some like 4 over through 3, and ended up shooting like a 74 or 75, like even though I didn't have my best stuff, just because, I was able to not let it get to me as much during the round. And then like after the round, like, sure, I didn't feel great. I also played poorly the next round, and I had one of my worst tournaments of the season. And I was a little bit sad about it for maybe 20 minutes, and then I was on the drive home. I was just talking to my teammates, and it was fine. So it's been a very good like progression, but you're never gonna completely get rid of the feeling.
So you talked about some of your struggles with putting, and I was listening to a podcast you did yesterday. You talked about switching putters and working on that. So you had those 2 wins senior year, and you must have putted pretty solid to win those tournaments. So what have you done to really make your putting better?
So I will go into what I did to make my putting better, but I'll also be honest. When you say like putting solid, like that is like being generous still. Um, to win those golf tournaments, so the first one I shot like 8 under, right? And I did that by making 13 birdies and 5 bogeys, which was basically birdieing most of the par fives, picking up a couple strays, and then not short siding myself. And I didn't make any putts. Like I made a few putts. Okay, you can't win a golf tournament without making any putts, and especially down the stretch, I made two. I made two really solid 8 to 10 foot par putts in the last like 5 holes, and then had a pretty good 2 putt on the last hole to get myself into a playoff. But in terms of strokes gained, it wasn't like crazy positive. It was like something on the order of like 0 or like maybe 1, right? It was something like that. And then the second tournament was a lot of the same deal. It was a par 70, so not as many par fives, but I just wasn't making bogeys. And if you don't need to shoot 26 under to win the golf tournament, if you just don't make any bogeys and you're like playing solid enough that you're succeeding at not making bogeys, you're probably going to make a couple birdies just on accident. And it's not like you don't have to get hot for that to happen. So like the putter never really got super hot. But I did take it from something that was like a real weakness where I would have a lot of like -6, -7 type days. And I would say what I did honestly was entirely just changing the putter and changing the setup and finding something that worked really well for my like visual alignment. I've struggled with my eyes and my visual alignment for like a few years now. And my old putter, it was a blade. I just couldn't line it up square. Simple as that. And I like, not only could I not line it up square, but I couldn't get myself to be convinced that it was aimed where it actually was. And that's like any golfer who's been in that like mental loop. It's not a fun one to be in because you feel horrible over every putt. And I lived like that for like years of college. I switched putters. I switched to a Spider X, and it has a visual alignment that works for my eyes. And usually my time spent in that like bad cycle of not knowing where you're aimed and not feeling like you're aimed where you're aimed, the length of time in that cycle has definitely gone down. So it's like, of course I've like done general putting practice too and worked on my speed and all that, but like honestly, it was just the alignment. Looking at something different really helped.
So as far as finding a putter that fit your visual alignment, was that just done through trial and error, or did you do some sort of fitting that allowed you to find that putter?
Yeah, I've actually never been fitted for anything. Funny story. I know I should. Obviously, right? Like shouldn't everyone? But this putter, I had just come off of qualifying, and I had shot like 9 over for 6 rounds because I had a million putts every single time. Like I was hitting 16 greens every day and shooting 74. Like, you know. And after the last round, where I actually shot a 68, but I had like -4 strokes gained putting. Like I hit it so well, tee to green, and shot like 3 under. And that was after shooting like 78 the day before, where I hit 15 greens and shot 78 or something like that. It was just like I couldn't take it anymore, so I just drove to Dick's and tried every putter they had and walked out with one. And then I put it in play in a tournament 4 days later.
That is that is bonkers. So you go to Dick's, try out all the putters, you put it in play. 4 days later, is it still in your bag now?
Yeah, Yeah. I mean, like, haven't had much of a reason to change it. I mean, sure, I've had like weeks and days where I don't putt well or where I don't feel good with it. And I've hit putts with my old putter, but I can't like convince myself that I feel better over that putter than this putter yet. So it's still in the bag.
That's beautiful. And one thing I had a question about diving more into sort of your game. We've talked about putting, maybe not the strongest thing you have for you, but as long as you don't keep make a liability, then you're
Hmm.
able to do well. And on the D3 Guys Golf podcast, which we'll link in the show notes, uh, you have a great analysis about where your game's at, and you talk about how the real strength of your game is in your ball striking. And
Hmm.
as part of that, I heard you say earlier that you redid your swing. So, are you working on your swing by yourself? And uh, in either case, what did you work on to try to make that your strength?
So, um, it's funny you say work on it to make it my strength. It already was my strength before I made the swing changes. The thing I made the swing changes for uh, had more to do with club face control, especially with a driver. Um, just because I've never had an instructor, so I guess I should mention that I'm working on this on my own. I've never had an instructor. I could count on my hands how many lessons I've had, and the most I've had with one person was three. So I've been working on this alone. So because of that, and I didn't even really take videos and there were no like good players or knowledgeable people around where I grew up. So I had developed a lot of early extension, like a lot of early extension. And uh my sophomore year of college, we got an assistant coach who was very knowledgeable about the swing. And we like started talking about things, and I started to understand like what was going on like at a very technical level in my swing. And I was like, all right, we're gonna do something about this. And it was a big long process. um it's still going on, but the things I'm working on are, for instance, I'm still like trying to get the hands in front of the body like faster, so that I don't have to do a late shallowing move. One of the things, like, the difference in your first move with your hands between getting them in front of your body, like moving them out in front of your body versus dropping them down behind you. Um, sure, it has the effect on like swing path of hitting a draw versus hitting a cut. Um, but it also, like, something people don't think about is that the club head has inertia, right? Club head has inertia. So if you drop the hands, it steepens the shaft, right? Because the head wants to stay in the same spot. So just working on, the things that have trickle down effects, that lead to like, the early extension is a late shallowing move that's happening because the hands are back here and the shaft is upright. So if I'm gonna fix that thing that's going on in my pivot, I'm gonna have to, fix what's going on in my transition. And it's just, problem solving like that. And I've been at it for a while, but my swing's in a much better place now, and I'm, driving it better, and hitting it with the irons like about the same. Um, yeah, I didn't turn a weakness into a strength, I would say. I definitely improved my driving accuracy, especially in terms of balls that end up in play. I'm pretty reliable off the tee now, whereas before I'd hit a few foul balls. Uh, but like like that's really what it did. But like I always had the ability to hit it in the middle of the club face, which I would say is like the most important thing. And I just got that from the range when I was a junior golfer.
Yeah. And also in that podcast, something you'd said tying in with his ball striking is that you really had improved your mental preparation before tournaments. There were two things that you're working on and that was getting more distance and mental preparation. And
Mhm.
you touched on it with meditation, but could you walk us through both of those, why you tried to improve both of those areas and what you did to improve both those areas?
Sure. So I'll start with mental preparation. Um, so the mental preparation I was talking about on that podcast. So I recorded that in like November last year. Uh, so we had just come off the fall season, and me, I was used to being nowhere on anyone's radar in the rankings. Just plugging along, going to the tournaments, kind of being an NPC, right? Uh, Now all of a sudden, I had won a tournament. My worst finish of the fall was eighth. I had three top fives, in four tournaments, and I was just like, "Whoa!" Like now, people are texting me asking if I'm turning pro. Uh, and it was just a different world to be living in. And so I needed to take some time reflecting on how different that was going to feel the next time I had a scorecard in my hand, right? On top of the normal, like getting your mind ready for competition, which was something that I had never like put too much effort into before that fall. So I was adding to like the knowledge I had already gained somewhat on getting my mind ready for competition. I was adding to that now, like we're gonna try to go through some situations and try and like see how I would expect to feel and what my response is gonna be in like different situations, and just like plan ahead so that when I get on the golf course and I'm three over through four, my first tournament back in the spring, which I was three over through four, hitting nothing but snipe hooks, right? How like I'm sitting number two in the golf stat rankings, and I'm on watch lists, and like I have all this pressure, and now I'm three over through four. How am I going to respond to that? Well, luckily I had done some preparation for how I'd feel, and I was able to correct it and finish the tournament in the top 10, right? So that's it may sound like pretty simple and vague what I'm saying, but given enough time, if you really meditate on it well and understand how you're going to feel, it can be helpful. Um, the other one was distance. Uh, the distance was both like for my golf game and also like personal. Uh, so personally, I'd been going through some stuff. I had lost a bunch of weight. I wasn't at my peak shape, mentally or physically. So I was like, I need to get in the gym. I need to put on some weight. And if I'm going to put on some weight, I'm going to put on some speed while I'm at it. Uh, when we hit winter break, I hadn't like touched a club very much in the last couple of months, and I hadn't gone to the gym much. Uh, I was down to like the least I had weighed in like 4 years, and my ball speed had dipped to like 161. Okay. Like me taking a solid rip at it was like 161, which is like, I'm not going to say pathetic, but like it's pathetic, right? So I was like, we need to do something about that. And so I just went to the gym every day, consistent effort, obviously being smart about what I'm working on so my body is responding properly and building the muscle. But I was going to the gym every day, doing my speed sticks every other day, and just being very consistent about it and eating a lot. And then once we got back to school and I could get back in the simulator, it was taking drivers, and it was like, it's funny, our team like has a little bit of a culture that helps this, but I would take drivers and I would spend time just trying to hit them as hard as I possibly could. Like we got a TrackMan, which has which has the like fractional miles per hour of ball speed. Okay. Having fractional miles an hour of ball speed was such a like huge thing for me, because if I had like set the previous day like 174.1 as a new PR, right? Well, the next day I can shoot for 174.2, right? Right? And I'm going to like keep hitting this driver as hard as I can until I get one that says 174.2, right? And then the next day I'm sitting in there. Well, it turns out the previous day I didn't get 174.2, I got 174.6, right? Because I caught a hot one. And the next day I'm going after point 0.7, right? And you can kind of feed off of yourself like that, like have those sessions every couple days, little competition with your teammates, about like, no, I bet I can hit it like harder than you. And they're like, oh, you think you're a huge boy? Like I've been in the gym, and then like, you're like trading drivers back and forth, trying to hit them like as hard as you can. And it's so important for building speed just to like try and hit things hard. So that was like a really important part of the speed training. So in a span of literally like under 6 weeks, I went from my speed record, or like my speed where it was, not record. I had been in the 170s before, but I went from like 161 to my PR at the end of that 6 weeks was 178.9.
So, looking forward with your golf career, this year you won the Byron Nelson Award, and
Yes.
with that, you receive an exemption into next year's AT&T Byron Nelson. Are you looking to turn professional for that event, or what are you thinking for that?
So my current plan, in all honesty, is, probably stay amateur. Um, I'm going to grad school in the fall. I'm, starting a PhD. What effect that'll have on my golf game remains to be seen. I could embarrass myself out there at the Byron Nelson. Who knows? I mean, like, I don't know. I heard the course is gettable, so I can scrape it around even par, miss the cut, but like, at least be like, all right, he shot even par. I think I'll be able to do that, maybe. But I'm starting grad school, so it's not really feasible to be playing professional unless I were to like start doing grad school part time. And even then, it would be like really difficult. And I'm going to be living in New York City, which it makes it hard to work on your game. But there are also like a lot of really good amateur events around there that like if I'm around, I just want to play golf. I like, yes, I have some self-belief, okay, but I know I'm not Tiger Woods. Okay. I know I'm not Scotty Scheffler, who came through the junior ranks like, scorched earth, like beating everyone by a million, and then did that in college, and then went to the pros, and now he's doing it in the pros. Like, I'm not that, okay? Um, I could maybe make a living, maybe even make it to the tour if I worked hard enough, but I'm not a generational talent. So, I'm content like playing high level golf, as long as I can keep doing that in whatever capacity I can. Obviously, I'm going to do the best I can. And hopefully, there are more big events in the future. And after grad school, if I'm still playing well, maybe I'll give it a shot. But right now, the plan is to probably stay amateur just to keep the access open for like playing as much like really good golf as I can, while I'm good at it.
That makes sense. Part of that that you said really resonated with me as we talked with another guy, Charlie Harrison, played at Wake Forest, ended up going on a big break. You might have seen him at some point. Um, and there's a calculus involved with everything. And he said similar thing where he played 4 years of pro and he knew he wasn't going to be, he's not a generational talent. If he got it out there, he was going to be digging it out of the dirt. And even
Hmm.
then, like, there are a lot of good alternatives. And in your case, you're too humble to say it, but you're a really smart guy, and sort of a savant in many ways. I saw your violin videos. I mean, you
Oh
have
boy.
multi-talented to say the least. And so when it comes to deciding whether you're going to play pro, you have a lot of great options in front of you besides that. And it makes sense not to go that route for any reason in general, but especially for that reason. But going forward, playing in that tournament, I imagine you'll feel a lot of nerves, especially probably not playing as much competitive golf as before. Will you be able to draw back on other experiences? And in particular, what I want to know is what time did you feel the most nerves on the golf course, and what have you learned from that?
Yeah. So the first thing I'm gonna draw upon is all the expectation management, especially, I'm gonna, this is gonna sound silly, but conditional expectation. It's a thing in probability. It's just your expectation conditioned on something. Well, my expectation conditioned on standing on the first tee of a PGA Tour event is a snipe hook that could very well go out of play. And I'm prepared for that. I'm mentally prepared to make double on the first hole. It's fine. And there's a history of stuff to go back to. So I'll go back to what made me feel the heat the most noticeably the first time was when I was trying to win my first college tournament, and I gotten out of the habit at looking at golf stat, through my years of college. I just like generally don't look at my phone while I'm playing golf. And the same was during college golf. Like I wouldn't look at the leaderboard. Well, I knew going into the final round I was like three back, and I was sitting a couple under on the round with six holes to play, and I was going to a reachable par five. I was like, I wonder what the lead's at. And then I looked and I was like, oh, I'm one back playing a reachable par five. And then all of a sudden, everything felt a little different. I birdied that par five, but then played like the most scrappy next three holes in a row that like you've ever seen. Like I hit one on yeah, so we were shotgunned out there. So I was finishing on hole five. But on three, yeah, it was hardest hole on the course in terms of the tee shot. There's OB up the right, some pretty like big trees up the left, but it was like kind of open in there. But there was a creek in front of the green, so if you hit it in those trees and didn't get lucky, like you weren't hitting the green. Um, and the play, all week was to hit it up the left edge of the fairway. If you pull one in the trees, like whatever, it's part of your shot pattern. But at least it's never going OB. Like you aim there and you just make a committed swing. Like it will never go OB. Like you would have to hit a terrible golf shot, right? And I had successfully navigated that tee shot three times in a row, and all of a sudden I just tightened up and made a not very committed swing and hit it like I swear 100 yards left. Like it would have been so far out of play if there were anything that were out of play on the left side. And I ended up then like taking like a pitching wedge from like 130 and trying to hit it straight up in the air over this tree, like short of the green. Made like a 10-footer for par, which like I don't know how I did that. Like I was shaking. But things were starting to kind of come unraveled a little bit. When we got to five, I needed a par to get into a playoff and a birdie to win it. Standing in the middle of the fairway with a pitching wedge, I laid the sod over it, chunked it short of the green. Ended up like really nice two putt from the front fringe over a knob. But we got to the playoff and I was still like I was feeling it even more. And I hit a combination of hooks and chunks all the way to the win. I think I hit my first solid golf shot of the playoff on the fourth playoff hole. And it like my arms just felt like jelly. So I'll remember what that feels like, but I don't know if I have the solution yet, just because I've felt that some, but I haven't felt it to that degree since then. Even when I was like going for my second win, um, I felt it some, but that's because like I realized I was like leading, and then this guy made two birdies, so then I was not leading, and then I made three birdies in a row, but he made two birdies, so then we were tied, and then like and then he made a bogey and I made a birdie, and then it was like pretty much over. I didn't feel it the same way. Like I felt some, but I didn't feel it the same way. Or even like I don't know, there was another time actually, at the end of the fall where I was I had shot 65 in the second round to kind of get sort of into contention. But I was still like 4 or 5 back going to the final round. And I was sitting 6 under through 12. And I was like, I wonder where I'm at. Because the other kid in my group who had started like a couple shots in front of me was like 5 under through 12. I was like, I wonder like where we're at. And we were like, 2 horse race running away from the field. And I was like, now I feel it. And then I uh, made a quick double, followed it up with two birdies, but ended up losing by one just because I'm not going to pretend I'm the expert in handling how it feels, but I think that's why like it goes back to getting the scorecard in hand, getting yourself in those situations just so you know how it feels. Uh, I wouldn't say I've done it enough to be an expert in it, but I think just getting the comfort there, and I'm gonna try to draw on those experiences, but I don't have that many of them.
I can relate to that, except for never felt those exact nerves being in contention that much because I was not in contention for many things many times. But drawing on not just that experience, you said during that you had a shot where you hit a pitching wedge over a tree. And this is a super niche question.
Hmm.
And something that I did as a junior, see adults do now, and still am tempted to do a lot, is when you put it in the trees, it's taking on the riskiest shot possible to try to make up for it. And in particular, it seems so easy to do that. And it happens like in the case that we're talking about, even when you're playing good mathematical golf, sometimes you're going to put one in the trees because that's the better side to miss on, and it's still better to hit that club. How has that helped inform you as to being patient and comfortable hitting out the most the best way or the more strategic way?
Yeah, yeah, sure. It's a great question, and actually, I'll point out like that problem you were mentioning. It happened to Cam Smith this last weekend, even though he won the Open. All right, don't forget on Saturday, on number 13, he ended up like on the side of that bunker and decided to try to baseball swing it standing in the bunker over like gorse bushes and fescue. Like he had like 180 or something. He was trying to hit like a full iron shot baseball swinging, standing in a bunker. Even like no matter how good you are, the geometry doesn't even work. Like the heel's gonna dig. You have to take like, if you're gonna do that right, you have to take like a 4 iron and open up the face and like hit like a flop slice, but then the contact gets impossible. Like it's like it's not a shot that you can hit, okay? And he was just like, I need to hit this shot. Like no one's immune from that, okay? Um but like knowing the math like certainly has helped. Now, I'll qualify this. I take on some shots. The math doesn't say never take on a shot. What the math says is that even if you just don't take on a shot, like pitching out sideways almost never loses you like significant shots. Okay? Like if you can pitch it out, like if you're a PGA Tour player, like just because I know these numbers sort of the best, if like in the trees anywhere, and you can pitch it out to somewhere around like 80 to 120 yards, like if you can pitch it out to that, that will be like a zero strokes gain shot, you know? So anything you can do past that is just gravy, right? Like anything you can do, like that's not to say that you can't do other things, but like just understanding that you always have that base option, like, yeah, you already screwed up the tee shot. All right. Those strokes are gone. You lost them. Strokes gain shows that. All right. What are you going to do from here? Well, you always have like, it sounds like a cop out. It kind of is a cop out, but it's a cop out that gets you zero strokes gained. So you want to like only take on shots that you can get in a better place than 80 to 120 yards in the fairway. So for example, that pitching wedge over the tree, um, you know, when I evaluate a situation, I know I got the sauce, right? Everyone's got like a little bit of shot making ability. Um, I grew up playing golf in a way where I can hit a lot of golf shots, and I knew I had that shot, and I knew provided I didn't just like blade it into the tree, I would get up over the tree and I'd have plenty to cover the creek, even if it didn't get all the way back to the flag, as long as I just, open up that face and lean back and catch it clean. Right. So it was a decision that I made that was like a little bit riskier than just punching out sideways. But I think the important thing to remember is like when you have opportunities that present themselves like that, you have to be like sure that it's going to be better than that punch out to 100 yards.
So, kind of building off that, you mentioned you know all these strokes gain numbers kind of off the top of your head. When you're actually in a tournament in your pre-shot routine, do you talk yourself through these numbers, or how do you talk yourself through a shot on the course?
I would say the way the numbers manifest themselves in my pre-shot routine is my general feeling of anxiety over the shot. I think that's like what they control. If I'm over a 6 iron, I'm like, oh crap, I might make a bogey. If I'm over a wedge, I'm like, yeah, I might make a birdie. It's like sort of a gut feeling that's there that represents the numbers, but I'm not thinking about the numbers at all, other than my yardage. You know so when I'm talking through a shot like to myself, I guess what I'm doing as I'm like walking up to the ball, I'm doing a lot of the work before I get to the ball. Like I'm feeling what the wind's doing. I'm seeing what the slopes are, like how long it's going to play compared to the actual yardage, and sort of getting prepared for what the yardage will actually be. I usually have a good idea before I get to the ball. Then I laser it, usually confirms the yardage that I was gonna play it. And then I just, pick my club. I try to make sure that I'm always like over clubbing rather than under clubbing. That's just like sort of how I play. Like I take a lot of partial swings. I don't swing hard at a lot of iron shots. Um, just to make sure that I can actually center my shot pattern like in the wide direction, right? In the distance direction. If you just hit a club that barely gets to where you want to center your shot pattern, well then you're not centering your shot pattern there, right? So that's just a little aside. So I make sure that I have enough club to at least cover the number that I want to hit it. Uh, and so I sort of just see a shot. I don't know, that part's like unconscious, but I sort of see a shot. I see a target. Sometimes I'm very conscious about the target, but other times if it's like a 3 iron from like 240 and there's like trouble somewhere, like I'm kind of like aiming somewhere like nebulous, I guess, which isn't the greatest habit, but like I'm hitting it over there, you know what I mean? But I have like a general like shape and a general type of swing that I'm going to put on it. And then once I get over the ball, all I'm thinking about is, I'm trying to align, and then I'm just thinking about contact. It's all like then it's just contact until I hit the ball. Um or whatever swing thoughts I have, but I'm always like just looking for contact, and if I make good contact then I've done my job. The rest of it's just variance, you know.
Hmm. Excellent. Well, I have two questions left for you. The first one is less about tournament golf and more just more personal, and that I'm interested to see what's the best shot you can remember hitting.
Well, okay, so there's a difference in like what you mean by best shot necessarily, right? So there there have been great shots that I've hit. There have been great shots that I've hit under circumstances. I mean, there have been like legitimately just like perfect golf shots that I've hit that didn't like mean anything. I could go through those, but I think they're a little bit less significant. I would say the best one I ever hit under circumstances was I was in a playoff for the 2017 White Deer Invitational. Now, this is a like club level golf tournament, right?
Hmm.
And I was still like a junior golfer, and was in a playoff. It was a 4 ball tournament. My partner was out of the hole. Other team was in for par, and my ball backed up against the collar. Okay, so I was up against the collar like 25 feet away, and I was sitting there like thinking, what should I do with this ball? And I had a wedge out, and then like right as it was my turn, and the best part was there was like a small gallery around too. I like took out my putter. I took out my putter, and then I saw people going like this, like, oh, he's gonna putt that. And then right before it was my turn to hit, I just like flipped it 90 degrees. I bopped it with a toe and made it to win the tournament. And I have not heard the end of that shot. I still hear it every once in a while because the guys that we ended up beating, I play with them like a decent amount whenever I'm home, and yeah, I have not heard the end of that shot. It's just like one of those things. Of course, there was luck involved with it going in, but like you know, with the pressure of a lot of pro shop credit on the line, you know, hitting that tiny little toe on that putter and getting it to come out right and go in the hole. That was something.
That's legendary. And that fits well with our last question, in that you took some experience from uh, different areas and have been able to incorporate it with good memories of confidence. If you could go back to yourself when you were younger and tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
Mhm. Um, let's see. I think I think it would. Hmm, I don't know. I'm between a couple things. So one thing is I definitely like would tell myself to get my headspace and my temper figured out a lot faster. Um Getting to the point where that's no longer a huge issue took a lot of work, a lot more work and time than it should have, and I would have been a better golfer the whole way and maybe ended up exponentially further forward in my golf career, like had I known that from a young age. Not that everyone isn't telling you as a kid, like to stop being mad, but actually internalizing that and internalizing why it is that you shouldn't be mad and how to control yourself when you're starting to feel a little mad, and why it is that you're even mad in the first place. Understanding all of those things would have gone a very long way, in my opinion. Just because, like, I didn't understand that, like, oh, I pushed my 6 iron 10 feet right of my target, like, boo hoo. Like, that's still like you almost hit it right on your target, right? And I would be sitting there, like, aimed at tucked pins and then pushing it a little bit and, like, missing the green and making an auto bogey and not understanding that like that was like I brought that possibility into play when I aimed it at the flag, right? So it's not something to start slamming your club over, right? So I think that would probably be the biggest one that I would want to address with myself, and I think it would have snowballed into some other good things.
That makes sense. Well, we appreciate it. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you on social media or anything like that?
For sure. You can find me. My at is the same on like all the platforms, I guess. So I'm at Free Willy with 3 L's and 4 Y's. I know it's a little confusing. It's a name some girl gave me in 8th grade, and I just like it's been my at ever since then. Just never changed it. So Free Willy with 3 L's and 4 Y's. For like a lot of golf related content. I'm usually on Twitter, like in the golf Twitter space quite a lot. Got any questions about like analysis stuff or golf swing or like playing good golf, like I'll always answer the best I can. I try to like reply to pretty much everything that comes my way. So you got anything, send it my way.
Thanks for joining us today. Please do us a big favor and like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts so we can help others learn how to play better tournament golf. You can find us online at thetournamentcode.com, on Instagram at thetournamentcode, and on Twitter at tournamentcode. As always, feel free to reach out to us at those places or email us at daniel@thetournamentcode.com and cooper@thetournamentcode.com. We hope you join us as we continue to dive deeper into what it takes to play elite tournament golf.